Andy, it warms my heart to have you on Facing the Canon. Thank you for introducing me to Jesus.
It's fine, it's all right.
What do you mean it's fine? If you hadn't told me about Jesus, I might be running a kebab house or something in London. I don't know. Do you remember it, Andy? We were both students at Hendon College in London. It then became Middlesex Poly, and now it's called Middlesex University. But we were students, and I remember, we probably have two different versions of the story, but I can remember meeting you on my first day, and you discovered that I was Greek Cypriot, as you are, and we became friends.
That's right.
And then from September onwards, how do you remember my journey of faith?
Well, my version is we would bump into each other, have a little chat. I think that we used to go out and eat at lunchtime sometimes.
Yes.
And then over a period of time, I got to know you. And I remember one week in February, I gave you a little gospel booklet. And I went home to our prayer group and said, I've been sharing with this young student at Hendon, and today I've given him this gospel booklet. Can we pray?
It was Journey into Life.
It was. Can we pray that he'll read it and open the door to Christ? So that week, you came up to me, and when I bumped into you, and you said, I've read the book, I've prayed the prayer, what do I do now? So I said, I'll meet you on Sunday this week at such and such a place and such a time, and I'll take you to our youth fellowship. And that's when it began. And you came, and I went, and we went to it. And then the discipleship began for a while.
Well, I remember you said to me, what you've got to do now is you've got to study the Bible. So I said, all right, I've got to study the Bible. And you go, Wednesday nights, that's when we do that. So I said, all right. And then you said to me, you've got to tell other people about Jesus. And I said, all right then. And you said, that's on Saturdays. And we would go out, we'd go out on the streets of North Finchley and just tell people in the streets. So yes. I think the week after I became a Christian, you met me on a Saturday with other youth, and the whole youth group went out. And then you said, and you've got to worship. And so, all right then. And so we did that on a Sunday.
I was really good, wasn't I?
You were very good.
Wow.
I know, but it was really interesting because you said, look, this is what you need to do. I slotted into Bible study on a Wednesday night in the home of the youth workers.
Wow.
Saturday night we went out on the streets. Sunday we would go to church service and then to the youth fellowship.
Yes.
So you did good, actually, Andy.
Thanks.
Yeah, you really did good. And I went off to theological college, and you were working, but you would send me money to help fund me at theological college. So it's a good job you did that. You've done well. So, Andy, have you always known Jesus?
No. When I was 17, a friend sitting next to me in school, at secondary school, who wasn't a Christian, he said to me, would I like to go with him to a summer camp? So we went along to something called Limpsfield, which was a Christian summer camp. And I knew it was a Christian camp. I wasn't interested in Jesus. I wasn't interested in Christianity, but I went along. And halfway through the week, I decided to open the door, as I felt that Jesus was knocking at the door and that I could know him and have a friendship with him. So one night, I think it was something like the 28th of July, at 10 o'clock at night, in 1973, in Oxted in Surrey, a little village, I opened the door to Christ and began that journey of following him.
And did it make a difference?
It made a difference.
Straight away?
Straight away. The next year, That it made a difference straight away, and I was followed up immediately. They knocked at my door a week or two later and said, we'd heard, Andy. Knocked at my door literally. They came to the house, knocked at the door, the word got out that I'd become a Christian. So Andrew Liversidge visited me, knocked at the door and said, we've heard you become a Christian. I'm inviting you to Christchurch Youth Fellowship. Come. So I went along and got discipled. The next year, I had another encounter in the Spirit, and that encounter was even more profound than the first.
Yes.
And it was that encounter that enabled me and empowered me to share my faith. And you're the consequence of that encounter, along with many other people through the year. That Holy Spirit encounter enabled me to share my faith and also bring people to Christ. So that was a very important event that followed conversion, which the Bible speaks about.
You then studied, you trained as an engineer, you were a parachute engineer, and you did that for a while, and then you went and worked in a church in Chichester. And out of that church, you planted churches, you trained leaders, and you started speaking and ministering around the UK, and then you began to go overseas.
Yes.
And you had the opportunity to go to Nigeria. Tell us about your first experience of Nigeria.
A gentleman called Corky sat in my kitchen one day and invited me to go to Nigeria with him. This was over 25 years ago. And as he's talking, I'm thinking, I'm not going. You can talk, you can show me the pictures, but I have decided I'm not going. Somehow I told my vicar about it, and he shocked me. He said, let's pray about it. Anyway, we prayed about it, and I ended up going. And so I was a guest.
Describe it.
I was a guest of Corky Davies, so I just followed him. So I tagged along and went along. And
he was the director of open air campaigners
in the West Country.
Yeah, and had yes.
Wonderful man.
Yes.
And every time while we were there, every time they asked him to speak, older, great speaker, wonderful, loved out there, they knew him, and he never ever spoke. He always said to the man that asked him to speak, the pastors, no, Andy will speak. So I ended up doing some speaking. So that was my first trip. I was a guest, I tagged along, I did a bit of speaking, then I got back to Heathrow after 2.5 weeks, landed at Heathrow after coming from this country, Nigeria, fell on the floor, kissed the floor.
Like John Paul II used to do when he visited countries.
Everything in slow motion.
You kissed the floor.
I stayed on the floor.
You stayed?
I stayed on the floor and prayed.
And what did you pray?
I will never, ever go back. Amen.
Amen.
It is finished.
Yeah, it is done.
Yeah.
You were thankful you were home.
I'm alive.
You're alive.
I'm not going back. So I surprised myself by going in the first place.
Yes.
Then I came back and decided, well, that was it. 6 months later, something began to happen. So I was working for a parish church. I had a really nice life there.
St. Pancras in Chichester.
Wonderful. Good vicar, great position. Chichester's very nice. Everything was great. After 6 months, I began to get a stirring, go back. So I went back second time, took a team, and I've been going back ever since.
So how many times do you think you've been back since that first occasion?
I think maybe nearly 40 times now.
40, and every time you go for several weeks at a time?
Yeah, I've been twice this year, and I've been for nearly 7 weeks this year.
Now, so what have you done over in Nigeria?
Well, we've done a number of things. We've got 2 big projects. Our biggest project is that we've founded a college, and it's called the Soteria Business School. It's in a big city in the south, 2 hours drive from Lagos, a city of several million called Ibadan. When I book into the hotel, I go into the same room, 211. When I open the key, go into the room, it's like I'm home. This is my hotel, this is my flat. This is my city, these are my people. I love them, they love me. So one of the things that we've done is, next year will be our 10-year anniversary. We've started a college for young people. And when I was there last month, we awarded 17 Chichester College diplomas.
Yes, so you've managed, you set up this business school college for vulnerable young people.
Yes.
But you managed to get accreditation and qualifications from Chichester College.
Yes.
How
in
did
business, administration and computing, a 2-year international diploma. So we've worked with them, fulfilled their criteria, and continue to fulfill their criteria and requirements so that we can continue to award. And I personally, myself, when we go, award them their diplomas. And while we've got them there for anything from 3 months to 2 years on this particular course, it's not just about education, which is the second most important thing for me. It's about bringing these young people to Christ. So it's about education and it's about Jesus. It's about making disciples. And they live in the school, fed, watered, educated, come to Jesus, baptized, love and Jesus. They love Jesus and follow Jesus. So that's kind of...
How many students do you currently have?
We have something like maybe 70 to 100 at any one time. That's our big project. There's another one,
and
but that's our main project.
How many of you graduated over the years?
Oh, many, many, many. I don't know how many.
Hundreds?
Yeah.
How did you select these vulnerable young people to come to your college?
Well, they're interviewed, and if they are poor, and if they're vulnerable, and if they're genuine, and they can't afford the fees, we give them a scholarship. Over 90% of our students are on a scholarship, sponsored from somebody from the UK.
And they come from all sorts of backgrounds.
They come from anywhere in Nigeria, all kinds of backgrounds. Muslim students, Christian students, girls, young men, from 16 to 35, mostly.
Tell us a story or two about the life of one or two of your former pupils who've graduated.
I won't mention their names.
Okay.
One young woman was brought to the school and her fees were paid for by a man. And she was really very unhappy and distressed. And we found out that this man, in return for him paying for her fees, wanted to marry her or her sleep with him, live with him. So we paid the man back his money and told him to go, and if he was to come back, we would deal with him. We brought her in. She lived in the women's dormitory for 2 years, in the end got her Chichester diploma. At the same time, there was another man, I won't tell you his name, and both his parents are dead, he's vulnerable, he's on a scholarship too. He's living in the men's dormitory. He also got a Chichester diploma. While they're there for 2 years, fed, watered, educated, they're slowly being transformed. They're changing from the inside out. It's not just about food, water, education, thank you, May. It's about what Christ is doing in their lives. They're beginning to be transformed and changed. They meet each other, they've fallen in love, and they get married. They've got 2 children, and we decided to keep them and give them jobs. We can't do that for everybody, but these 2 people now have worked for us for many, many years, and they live in the flat, in the school. And he's tremendously gifted as a musician and pastor and evangelist. He's in his early 30s. She's an amazing woman. and their children now are being sponsored from people from the UK. That's one story of many who are either poor or vulnerable. But those that, obviously we can't give jobs for everyone, and that's not the aim anyway, they leave us and they can start a business. They leave us, they can start a business designing websites. Or they leave us and they get a job. In fact, the majority of students in Nigeria won't be able to go to university, and they don't need to go to university, in fact. They can come to us, get some schools of qualification, and then start a business or get a job with that for those who don't go to university.
How do you see, in these years ahead, the work that you're doing in Nigeria growing?
Well, I see, I've talked about tonight about our one project. We have another project.
Yes.
And I see both projects growing. Our other project is that we're schooling nearly 60 children all the time. And through the years, we've schooled hundreds of them.
And again, these are vulnerable children.
These are poor and vulnerable
How
children.
do you define poor and vulnerable?
Well, they're poor because they struggle to eat. They can't eat properly. They might not have a father or a mother. That's vulnerable. So we pay for their school fees to go to school. And then we've made a promise to them that when they finish the secondary school, we'll have them come to our college.
So you've been helping children for many years, even before the college?
Longer than our college. Yes. So I see our two projects getting stronger, developing with new courses, growing in size, people coming to Christ. Every time I go, for example, I baptize people because they've come to Christ. I interviewed two girls last month. So in the baptism class, I said to one of them, first question, baptism class, preparation for baptism Saturday. When were you born again? Last Tuesday, sir. When you asked us to receive Christ and you led us in a prayer, I became a Christian last Tuesday. That's why I want to be baptized. So every time I go, I'm baptizing young people. So I see all that strengthening and developing and growing with Nigerian courses. And there's the other side of our work, which is schools work. When I turned 50, I felt the Lord say to me, I want you to be a schools evangelist.
At the age of 50?
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I said, I've given up in England doing that, but I'm doing it in Nigeria. So, I just walk out on the field. I've got a whole school in front of me. I've got maybe 1,000 young people from 11 to 16. I've got the teachers on the side. I may be standing under a tree or just in the field. I'm speaking about Jesus and giving them an opportunity to follow Jesus. And then afterwards, they take me into a classroom and they're sitting on the desk, they're sitting on the windowsills, they're sitting on the floor, or they're standing. I've got 70 or 100 jam-packed in a shabby African classroom, and they're itching to hear more about this Jesus that loves them. So I'm training others to do the same. I got a text this morning, I'm going to this school, and Reverend Andy, will you pray for me? So it's not just about me, it's about training up leaders to do the same kind of thing, to bring people to Jesus and disciple them.
As you look back, are you surprised that you're doing what you're doing?
I'm very surprised sometimes. Yes, I am. But it's wonderful. And as God gives us strength and health and His Spirit and His resources and people to pray with you and go with you, we just continue training and going and doing the Lord's work. It's a joy. It's a joy to see people come to Jesus, to see people get education, to get jobs. And I feel at home there. It's become home to me, you know.
And God willing, you'll continue to do this.
I will.
And of course, you have a ministry in the UK, and you travel extensively in the UK, speaking and teaching and introducing people to Jesus.
Yes, maybe 2 or 3 weekends, Sundays in the month, I'm out speaking somewhere, and our emphasis is evangelism, training and renewal, and praying for people, praying for the sick, praying for the well, just to bring renewal to the church, to encourage the church, to strengthen the church, to love the church, and to help the church win people for Christ. Because I was a parish evangelist. There are hardly any. Churches have got curates. But I was a parish evangelist and a lay minister for 10 years. So, you know, my heart is for parishes, Anglican churches and other denominations too, to win people for Christ and disciple them. So I've always had that pastoral aspect. So it's not just about I'm an evangelist. You know, when you came to Christ, it was about discipling you.
Yes.
You know, when I brought Lyndon to Christ, knocked at a door, did a survey with this big man, then went back 6 months later.
So wait a minute, just explain that to us. You go knock on someone's door.
So when I was a parish evangelist, my job was to train the church in evangelism and reach out to our parish. So I knocked at the door, did a survey, as I would sometimes do, and then I made a note discreetly of the number of the door, and to go back. 6 months later, you were coming to Chichester, went back to this house, knocked at the door, Lyndon opened the door. Asked myself in and said to him, Lyndon, I've come to invite you.
So you said, can I come in?
Yeah, can I come in?
Yes.
He's fixing his central heating system. It's broken.
And you're an engineer,
I'm an engineer.
What to do.
I'm interested. So we talk about his warm air, central heating system which is broken. So from that, I invite him to a dinner meeting, which you're speaking at. He comes, along with many others, at the dinner, and we pay for him, of course. About 120, 140 people came. You get up, you speak. You give an opportunity for people to know Christ. Coffee served. I turn to him and say, what did you think of that? He said, you people have got something. I said, did you pray the prayer? He said, no. Next week I'm in his house. We spend a whole evening there. We leave. He reads that Journey into Life book that you read.
Yes.
Gets on the floor, opens the door to Christ, becomes a Christian, born again. Starts coming to church. His wife becomes a Christian. His children become Christians. Then he went to a theological college in Bristol and became a vicar. So that's like, and then we discipled him, you know, between conversion and going to theological college, discipled him for months. So we'd go to his house fortnightly, discipling him. So, you know, discipleship and follow-up has been a key thing, you know, in my over 40 years of ministry. So whether it's you or whether it's him, you know, it's in my heart to follow up whenever possible.
What is the gospel, Andy? How would you explain it, articulate it? If somebody would want to become a Christian, how does that actually happen?
Well, it's very simple. We've got a problem. Our problem is sin. And our sin has cut us off from God. And this God sent his Son to die and rise again. To die to remove the problem of our sin, which has cut us off from God. And if we would believe and receive, to all them that believed and received, So you need to embrace Christ. You need to receive Christ and make him your Lord. Come under his lordship. You need to receive him and believe in him. But he is the Christ. He is the Son of God who died on the cross out of love to remove the problem, the sin, to bring you to God. To all those that received him, that's what we need to do, and believed in him, he gave them the right to become children of God, born of God. So if we open that door and allow him in and receive him, we're born again. Born of God. We must be born of the Spirit. It's very simple, but it involves humility. He is Lord. So we must come under his lordship. So it's about us doing that. It's about respect. Let's respect him. Who is he? He's the king. He's the prince. We respect the president or a prime minister, or we respect very much our queen. She's wonderful.
Yes.
How much more should we respect the king? The king. How much more should we respect the prince? So I don't care who a person is. I don't care how much money they have, what colour they are, whoever they are. We must all bow, all presidents, all people must bow before this king, this prince. And then we'll have this life to the full that he's dying to give.
Andy, I've known you for 41 years. You're a very gracious, humble man who loves Jesus and is passionate and compassionate for the lost. And it's wonderful to see all that you have done, all that you're doing in the UK, all that you've done and all that you're doing in Ibadan. And our prayer is that you will continue to be blessed as you're a blessing to many others. Andy Economides, thank you very much.